Hi, welcome to my channel Ruby Knit Crochet Tejido. Today I'll be teaching you how to knit this beautiful kid sweater or cardigan. It's for the set with a hat that I did last week. I hope you guys like it and give it a try, and here is the list of material you're gonna need to make it. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe and click on the little bell. That way you get notification each time I upload a video. Remember, I make my videos in Spanish and English. If you receive a Spanish video and you want to see an English, go to the main page of my YouTube channel and you'll find the English version in there. Also, you can send me a message and I can send you the link. I always leave at the end of the video a playlist with all my English tutorial. So this sweater is the combination with these two hats. So William can wear any of these two hats with this sweater. So something that I wanted to mention is you find that I go too fast my work and you want me to slow down. What you can do is you go to in the bottom of the video you will see this, the adjustment. You see the little wheel like that, and it will say speed normal, but if you want it to go slow, you go to the numbers from normal up and you pick any of those speed. Or you want it to go faster, you go from normal down. It will be like it's fast forwarding the video faster, okay? And the normal up, you will slow down the video. And that is not just only with all my videos, it's with anybody's video. You can adjust the speed that you watch the video, okay? So I just wanted to give you that tip, just in case you don't know that yet, okay? To make this sweater, I'm gonna use this leftover yarn that I have from the hats that I made for William. I made these two hats and I decided to do a sweater with the leftover, that way he can wear the sweater with these hats. So this one is from Red Heart Super Saver Stripe, and the color is Cool Stripe, and I have 108 grams. And from this one is Loop and Thread Impeccable Aran Tweed is the color. It's medium 4 as well. Both of them are medium 4. And I have 51 grams of this one. I hope it's enough. But if not, I will still have some more of these two yarn. You're going to need buttons. I have these ones. They go nicely with this green and the yarn. The little fish. And the needles that I'm going to use is the circular needle 5 millimeters. You're going to need tapestry needle and scissors and maybe some markers as well. Something else that I forgot to mention that you're going to need is 2 pieces of extra yarn to pass the weighting stitches for the sleeve, and double pointed needles for the sleeve. When we start the decrease, to get smaller and smaller, you will need double pointed needles. I did this graph in here to explain you how the stitches go. So in here I have 5 and 5, that is 10 for the overlap at the buttons in the front, and then I have 10 here for one side. One stitch here, that is where the stitch is in the center, and you're gonna have one increase on each side, one increase for the front, one for the sleeve. You will have 8 stitches for the sleeve, and then again 1 stitch, increase in one side, increase in the other side for the sleeve and back. 20 stitch for the back, that is 10 from one front and 10 for the other one. Double for the back is 20, and again 1 stitch for the increase in either side for the sleeve and back, 8 for the sleeve, and again 1 for the increase on each side, and 10 for the other front. That is 70 stitches that I have here. Now if you want these a little bit smaller, you can leave this 5 and 5. This is for the overlap at the bottom, that stay the same, and you can do here 8 stitches. This one stay 1. You can do 6 stitches instead of 8. You can, 1 stay that one there, and here you'll have to decrease 4, because you decrease 2 in here and 2 here is 4, so you'll have 16 in the back, and that one stay here, 6 in here, and 1 in here. So if you want it just a little bit bigger than mine, you can increase, and instead of decreasing 2, you increase 2 in each part. So in here you will have 12, here you will have 10, here you will have 24, and 10 and 12. So in total you will be increasing 12 stitches. So to my 70 stitches you increase 12, that will be 82 stitches that you will have to cast on if you want it bigger than mine. And if you want it smaller than mine, you will have to remove 12 stitches, and that will be 58 stitches that you have to cast on. You have another choice. If you want to do a little bit smaller, but you don't want to change the amount of stitches, what you do, you use one size needle smaller than mine. I'm using a 5mm, you can use a 4mm. And if you want a little bit bigger than mine, but you don't want to do any changes on the stitches, what you do, you use a 6mm, and it will be a little bit bigger. So I hope my explanation is well, and we're gonna start casting on for mine 70 stitches. We have to leave a tail long enough to cast on our 70 stitches. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna wrap in here 10 times. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Remove those 10. Fold it in half is 20. Fold it again is 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, plus a little extra. I always like to leave a little extra. You're gonna do the slip knot. And I don't know if this is gonna be long enough to have all my stitches here after I start with the increases, but I will have to buy a longer one, so I need a longer one anyway, so I'll have to go to the store, probably to Walmart or Michael's, and buy a longer needle. These ones are perfect for hats. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you will continue until you have your stitches on your needle. Here I have my 70 stitches, but we want to work one knit, one purl for the top, a rib stitch. I want to start with the net and finish with the net. So we're gonna add one more stitch, and later we can add the extra stitch to the back. Don't gonna make a big difference, one extra stitch. So I'm gonna do 71. And the fluff is just right there. Let me remove that fluff. And some of them are smaller than the other one, but this one is a little big in there. So now I'm gonna do a knot to secure my work. And we're gonna work one knit, one purl, and to make sure that you don't work in the round. If you're gonna work in the round for a hat, your tail has to be in your right hand. But if you want to work an open work with circular needle, you have to have your tail in the left hand. So I'm gonna start with one knit, one purl, one knit, one purl, and you know you're going to work a rib stitch of one knit, one purl until the end, and you start with a net, and since we did the extra stitch, you're going to finish with a net. Okay, I finished the first row with a net, so behind that net is a purl, so you have to start the second row with a purl. So you're going to purl the purl and net the nets to create the rib stitch. So this one is a net, you're going to net that one, and this one is a purl, you're going to purl that one. And you're going to continue with the rib stitch of one net, one purl for 1 inch, an inch and a half, give or take the length that you want to do for the little collar. Okay, so 1 inch is 2.5 centimeters, so you can go from 2.5, 3, 4 centimeters. That 4 centimeters is 1.5 inch. So if you want to do more, you can do more. So I'm gonna do around 3 or 4 centimeters for my yeah, 3 to 4. So 1 net, 1 purl, you knit in the net and purl the purling. I finished with this part of the color. Now I'm gonna change yarn, and I made a cake with the leftover yarn. That one is easier to pull from the center. And we're gonna separate the parts of the sweater, like the front, the sleeve, the back, with markers. That way it's easier for us. So I'm gonna start with, I'm in the right side, and I got myself by the tail that is in the front. So if you finish and you are in the wrong side, you'll have to do a row purl, okay? So I'm gonna do this row just to separate. I'm gonna come here, and I'm gonna do my first one and my second one, and then I'm gonna tie those tails. Let me get a little more to this one. It's not enough. I like to leave enough tail to lose or to weave is easier. Now you can cut this one. And we don't want to use that one until almost done the body of the sweater, to do the border and then the sleeve. And I'm gonna tie a little knot between these two, that way the stitches are nice and secure. I have 2, so I need 5 for the front overlap. So that's 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to place a marker. So I made this tiny little marker, and I'm going to make some more of these for this type of project. When you have to put a lot of marker, you use these tiny little ones, and they're very light. So now for the front, the left hand front, I'm gonna do 10 net, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we're going to place a marker here. We're going to knit 1, that is the one in between the increases. We're going to place a marker, and now we're going to knit 8 for one of the sleeve. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Then I place a marker. We're gonna knit 1. That's the one in between the sleeve and the back for the increases. And I'm gonna place a marker. Now you have to do 21 for the back. Remember, we did the extra for the rib stitch to have the odd number, so you have the extra stitch. We're gonna keep the extra stitch because when we work in the border of the sweater, in the bottom part, you have to have again those odd numbers. So I'm gonna keep that stitch for the back. So in the back will be 21. So now you're gonna knit 21, place a marker, knit 1, place the marker, knit 8, place a marker, knit 1, place the marker, knit 10, place the marker, and knit 5 for the overlap of the front. here I have that row done and the markers in places. So now you have to decide what stitch you want to do for your little sweater. You can do a stockinette or all net, right and wrong side, or the stitch of the hat. That's what I'm going to do, the stitch of the hat. That way the set is perfect. So on the hat, the stitches were the 4 repetition. The first row was 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl. The second row was a net row. The third row was 1 purl, 1 net, and the fourth row was a net. But we're working in the round. Now we're working back and forth. We have a wrong and right side for the piece. So we did a net row, and that will count as the first row. We're going to change them around a little bit. And then for row 2, we're going to do 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl. For row 3, we'll do a net row. And for the fourth row, we'll do 1 purl, 1 net. Okay? So just changing them, the order of the stitch. That way you don't have to work that much purls. So now we're going to start with that row. And after that, I will explain how we're going to do the increases for the front, back, and sleeves. Now we're going to do the second row. And I wanted to mention that these 5 stitches here, the one for the overlap for the buttons, these 5 and the other 5 at the end, they always net. Net in the right side and net in the wrong side. So we're going to do this row, and then in the next row, we're going to start doing the increase and doing our first buttonhole. So now we're going to net these 5. 2, this one. I have a strand open. Okay. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Pass the marker. Now we're going to start with a stitch that will be in row 2. We're going to start with 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl. And something that I forgot to mention is that the stitch in between the increases, that is this stitch here in between these 2 markers, in the wrong side will be a purl, and on the right side will be always a net. This one, between these 2 markers. So now you're going to continue with 1 net, 1 purl until you get to the first marker. So what I did here, I finished before the marker with a purl. I purl the stitch between the marker, and then I start with the net. Okay, because this is how the stitch go. We don't count this one in here. Okay, so you finish in this side with a purl, you start with a net. 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl, and the same here. You will finish with a purl. You will purl the stitch in between the marker, and you will start with a net after the marker. So in this part here, I finished with a net because we have 1 extra stitch. So we're gonna ignore that stitch, and we're gonna start in the other side with a net like we've been doing so far. Okay, because that stitch was extra. So I'm gonna pass the marker, purl the stitch between the 2 markers, pass the marker, and start with 1 net, 1 purl. Okay, until the end. But you're gonna continue with the stitches. So I did this and here to show you where you're gonna measure your kits to figure out how many increases. So you're gonna measure from here, from the neck, the base of the neck, to under the arm a little lower, because you want room there for them to move their arms. So you don't want that too too tight in here. So I measure William, and I measure 12 centimeters. So it's like 2 increase per inches. So that will be 12 centimeter is like a 4.5 inches, but I want to give a little extra room. I'm gonna give it 5 inches. Okay, so go ahead and measure your kid, or you can guide yourself by this one if your kid is around the same age as William. Remember, they could be the same age but different sizes. So now I'll show you how to do the buttonhole and the increases. So we're gonna start, and these 5s are net, but we're gonna do the buttonhole on the left hand. So we're gonna net 2, 1 and 2. We're gonna do a yarn over and 2 together and a net stitch. So yarn to the front, these 2 together and a net stitch. So you see, and when you bring the yarn to the back, you create a yarn over. That will be the space for the buttonhole, the little hole, and you're gonna net the last stitch. Now we are doing repetition of row 3. That will be a net row, so you have to net all your stitches until you get to the first marker, and then I will show you how to do the increase. Now we have to do the increases. So we have the marker here, and we're gonna do yarn over and a net. This is the stitch in the center, and I'm gonna bring the yarn to the front for the yarn over. I'm gonna place my marker. I want my marker in here, so you see the yarn is in this side of the marker, and I'm gonna net this one with the yarn from the front over the marker. You see, creating the yarn over. I lost that net. So like this, you're gonna net that stitch, and your marker is in place in between the yarn over and that stitch. And later you can remove the marker because you can guide yourself by the yarn overs when you have to do the increase. So now we have to do an increase for the sleeve. So yarn to the front and net the next stitch. So you have an increase for the front and one increase for the sleeve. So now you continue netting and working a net stitch until the one before the marker. And here before the marker, so yarn to the front first, pass the marker, and you're going to net this one, creating a yarn over the needle and the marker. Now you're going to pass the marker, yarn to the front to do the increase for the back, and you're going to net the next stitch, and you're going to continue netting until you get to the one before the marker. Now sorry I had to do like that and not continue right away because I had to do Spanish as well. Now we're going to do the increase for the back and the sleeve and the other side. So yarn to the front, pass the marker, net that single stitch in the center between the marker. You're going to net that one, create a yarn over it and top of the marker and needle. Now you're going to pass the next marker, yarn to the front and net the next stitch, creating a yarn over and top of the needle. Now you're going to knit this 7 stitch, and again we'll do the last increase in between the sleeve and the front. So we're going to do the last increases. So you're going to yarn to the front, pass the marker, knit the stitch with a yarn over and top of the needle, pass the marker, yarn to the front and yarn over and knit the rest of the stitches. So you're going to knit all the stitches until the end, because remember these ones are knit in the right side and knit in the wrong side, the 5 stitches of the board. We're going to work in row 4, and since we change the stitches around because we're working front and back and the hat was done in a circular stitch, now we have to do in row 4 the 1 purl 1 net. So row 2 was 1 net 1 purl 1 net 1 purl, now it's 1 purl 1 net. So we're going to net these 5. Always these 5 are net. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Pass the marker. So now we start with the stitch. 1 purl, 1 net. 1 purl and 1 net, a purl and net, a purl and net, a purl, 1 net. And we got to the marker and we had to continue with the flow of the stitch, so we had to do a purl. You're going to pass the marker, purl the center stitch, pass the marker, and to continue with the flow of the stitch you have to start in here with a net. You finish on this side with the purl, you start with 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl, and then you're going to continue with 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl, purl the center stitch, and then you start 1 net and then 1 purl, because you have to continue, because you're supposed to continue with the flow of the stitch, and those are increases, and then you have to work as they come. Here on the back, remember we have that extra stitch, so instead to finish with a purl, we finish with a net, and we have to start with a net to continue with the flow at the increases, okay? Otherwise, the stitch is not gonna match. So you have to do a net here, and then a purl, and continue with your flow. Okay? So we finished row 4, so all the repetition is from row 1 to 4. Now we're going to start all over again with row 1, that is a net row, and then row 2 will be 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl, row 3 a net row, that will be in the right side, and then row 4 in the wrong side, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net. Each time you work in the right side, you're going to be doing the increases, and then in the wrong side you work the stitches. The buttonhole, we're going to make them every 6 centimeters around that length apart. I have my first one in here. So to know in which row you're working, the best way is to each repetition is 4 rows. So each time you do a row, you do a line and a line. When you have 3, you pass, and when you do 4, you cross those 3. Okay, so now I have to do row number 1, and when I finish row 1, I will do my little line in here, and then when I do row 2, another line, 3, another line, and 4, cross those. So that way I know in which row I'm working. So now you're gonna, this will be an entire net row, but we have to do the increase, so you're gonna net all these stitches until you get to this marker. You will do a yarn over, net the center stitches in between the marker, yarn over, net all the stitches until you get to this marker, and then yarn over, net the center stitch, yarn over, net, 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 until you get to the marker, yarn over, center stitch is a net, and so on. Okay, and this will be row 1 of the 4th repetition. Okay, so I hope you guys understand so far what we've done. So now we're gonna work row 1 of 4, and it's a net row.
Keep me so long. Oh, 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 ke
Now we're going to start repetition of row 2. And to make it easier for you, I recommend in the piece of paper, you will write first row is a net row. Second row is 1 net, 1 purl. Third row is net. And the fourth row is 1 purl, 1 net. And that way you can guide yourself through from here and the marking in here. So you're gonna knit the 5 border stitch. This always stay the same. That's the marker. Since we're doing row 2 is 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl. So you continue with 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl. Do the stitch in the mark as a purl, and then you finish it with a purl, and you start with a net. I finished repetition of 2, and I recommend to go and check your increases to make sure that you have the little hole of the yarn overs in place, because if you don't done your increases, you'll have to frog that part and back again to where you made the mistake and correct the mistake, because you have to have the increase even. Okay, so now we're gonna do repetition of row 3, and that is a net row and increase row at the same time. So we're gonna net the border stitches, pass the marker, and you're gonna continue netting until the one before the marker that we're gonna do our increase. Now we are at the marker, yarn to the front, pass the marker, yarn over, net a stitch, pass the marker, yarn over, and net the next stitch. And continue netting until the next marker, where you're going to do the same, the increase, and then we'll finish with repetition of row 3, and then we'll do repetition of row 4, and then we start all over again with the same 4 repetition. Now we're going to do the repetition of row 4, and we're going to knit for 5 stitches. Pass the marker, and now we have to start with a purl and then a knit. Purl, and purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Pass the marker, purl the stitch, pass the marker. Now we're going to do 1 knit, 1 purl, 1 knit, 1 purl, and like that you're going to continue working the stitches as you're supposed to. And if you look on the right side, you start to see the stitch forming. Okay, so we finished the repetition of row 4, and what we've done so far is we did 1 buttonhole. We do an increase each time we work the right side of the piece, and the stitch each time we work the wrong side of the piece. Now we have to work with this same repetition from row 1 to 4 until we are ready to do the next buttonhole. So the next buttonhole will be around 5 to 6 centimeters. Depend the distance that you want to give to your, it can be 4. So when you're going to do the next buttonhole, you have to make sure that it's in the right side of the piece. When you're knitting, you do the buttonhole, and you have to continue with this increase. In here I have 3.5 centimeters done. I had to work, when I measured William, was 12. So the last 2 increase, we had to do them without yarn overs. That way we don't get a hole under the arm. So when I have 11 centimeters done, I will change the last 2 increase. Sorry, it's not decrease, it's increase. The last 2 increase I will change, and I will do it different with no yarn overs. So that way it's nice under the arm with no holes. So you're gonna work as we done so far with this repetition. So we did the part at the collar, 1 knit, 1 purl, and we did an extra stitch. That way we start with the net and finish with the net, and we add a stitch to the back. And then we did the first row was a net row, and we placed the marker. We don't did any increase in that first row. And then the second row we did a stitch, 1 net, 1 purl. And the third row we did was a net row. We did the buttonhole and our first increase. And then the fourth row was the stitch, and then we start with the same repetition but without doing the open at the buttonhole and here. Okay, so I hope so far you understand what we done. Because I'm gonna work now off camera with exactly the same, with the same repetition that we done so far. 5 net, and now I have to do 5 net, continue netting until the stitch before the marker, yarn over, net 1, yarn over, continue netting until the next marker, and so on. And then in the way back I will start with the repetition row 1, that is 1 net, 1 purl, and then the next row will be repetition of 3. There is a net row that we do the increases. No buttonhole yet because we had to keep measuring the measurements in here, and so far will be around here the next buttonhole. So I had to do quite a few rows before my next buttonhole. And the buttonhole you have to do it when you do a net row. So either is in repetition of row 1 or repetition of row 3. And if you write down what you've done so far, so this is what you are repeating without doing the buttonhole. That's the stitch. We are not counting the 5 net in the beginning because those ones are always net. And then keeping track of how many rows you're doing and so on. So I hope so far so good. So I will meet you here when I'm ready to do the next buttonhole. I'm ready to do my second buttonhole, and I did 4 repetitions. So far I have done 4 repetitions of the stitch. So in the first repetition we did the first buttonhole. I did 3 without any buttonhole, and now number 5 I'm gonna do the buttonhole in row 1. That is a net row. And measure 5 centimeters exactly. 5 is and there 5 and a few more little lines, a couple of lines more. So it can be from 5 to 6 or 7 or 4, depending on the size of the buttons. So now we're gonna do our buttonhole. So we're gonna knit 2, yarn to the front for a yarn over, and knit these 2 together, and knit the next stitch. So by doing the yarn over, we created the little hole. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stitches again. So you're gonna continue with your stitch. You're gonna continue knitting the stitches until you get before the marker for the yarn over, 1 net, yarn over, net all the way around, and then on the way back I will be doing the repetition of row 2 and then 3, 4, and then now I don't need to measure when I have to do my buttonholes because I will guide myself by the amount of repetition that I have. So in between each buttonhole I will have 3 repetition of the stitch. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna continue working until I have the length that I need for the little sweater at the top. That is supposed to be 12, but I want a little bit bigger. But I'm gonna work until 11 because remember we have to do a couple of rows of increase different than the yarn over. So like this will look the increase if you don't have made any mistake. You have this nice design and the front of the sleeve, the same for the back and the other side, and the front and the other side. And remember I will work until I have 11 centimeters. So, and with this row I will have 6 centimeters. I had to work for another 5 before I separated the sleeve and the body of the piece, because we had to do 2 rows without yarn over of increase. That way we don't get the little holes under the arm. So I'm done so far. The length that I need before the last 2 increases for the piece, and those 2 increases we're gonna do it without any yarn over. So it looks really, really nice so far. So far what I have done is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 repetition of the stitch plus 2 more rows. Now we're going to do the repetition of row 3, that is the increase row, but we're going to do the increase without the yarn overs. So you're going to knit and here until your first marker, and here for the increase, and I will meet you here. So I'm in the place of the first increase, so you will have it like this. So you're going to grab the top strand. You see you have 2 here, they cross. The one in the top, you're going to pass it to your left hand needle, and you're gonna go to the back strand, not to the front, because and then it will be a hole to the back, and you're gonna net your stitch there, and that's the increase. And at the same time you just close the little hole. You're gonna pass your marker, you're gonna net the next stitch, you're gonna pass your marker, and again you're gonna do this in here. You're gonna grab the strand in the top, you're gonna place it back to your needle, and you're gonna go to the back strand, that's that one, and net in here, and you're gonna continue netting until the next increase. And you see we close those yarn overs in here. So you're gonna continue with this increase until the end, and you're gonna do the repetition of row 4 and the way back, and then we're gonna do repetition row 1, increase again, and that stops or increases. Okay. I will show you the increase one more time. So with the left hand needle, you're gonna grab the top strand, and in that back strand you're gonna do your net. You're gonna pass your marker, you're gonna net the next one, pass your marker, and you're gonna grab the top strand and place it back into your needle, and the back strand at that strand you're gonna net one, and then you're gonna continue netting until you have to do this again. So you will do this row, you're gonna come back with repetition of row 4, and when we work repetition row 1 again, I will show you the increase one more time. So I finished those 2 rows. Now I have to do 2 more, 1 row of increase and go back again. And since this is like nice and flat, I wanted to measure this, that way you see the measurements. And from here is exactly 12 centimeters. Remember, for William it's 12 centimeters, but I wanted to do a couple more row extra, so it will be like 13 centimeters long, and it's perfect. So I'm right on the ball. So we're gonna do a row increase again, echo back, and then after that we're gonna separate the front, the body and the sleeves. So net this piece until the marker, and I'll show you how to do the increase again here. And ready to do the increase. So between the 2 stitches, this strand in the center, you're gonna bring it up and place it in your left hand needle, and in the back strand you're gonna net the stitch, and that's the increase. You're gonna pass your marker, net the center stitch, pass your marker, and in between the 2 stitches, this strand in here, you're gonna bring it up, and in the back strand you're gonna net your stitch, and that was the increase. Now you're gonna continue netting until you have to do the other increases exactly like that one, And then when you finish this row, you will go back with a repetition of row 2, that is starting with the net and then purl, net, purl. And I will meet you here when you finish this row and the next one to separate the front and the sleeve, the body and the sleeve. I finished those 2 rows. So now if you did the buttonhole exactly like mine in the same rows, if you count in here, I don't want to count this row under the button, you know, this one just right here. I'm going to count this one that look like 2 purls together. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in the bottom 6 you have the buttonhole. So if I count here, you know, I don't want to count that one where the buttonhole is. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have 6 here. So now in the next row, the repetition of row 3, we have to do the buttonhole. That way they are exactly at the same distance. So let me show you here. If you done this exactly like mine, the first buttonhole you did it in the 3rd row. The second buttonhole you did in the first one. So now you have to do the 3rd buttonhole in the 3rd row and the 4th buttonhole in the first repetition. That way they are exactly at the same distance. So now we're gonna work the front, casting off the, casting off, no. We're gonna pass a strand of yarn. I have this cotton here. I'm gonna pass my sleeve. I'm gonna tie it. I'm gonna continue netting the back of the sweater. Do the same with the other sleeve, put it in the piece of yarn and tie it. That way I can pick them up later and then come here and work the front. So if you did exactly the same repetition as I did, you'll have the 5 border stitch, 24 stitch in here, 36 in here in the sleeve, 49 in the back. It's supposed to be 48, but since we have that extra for the ribbing, we have 49. We have here 36 and 24 plus each one of these. Those stay 1 and the 5 on the other side. In total you have now 183 stitches in the entire piece. Yeah, and we start with 70. So now we're gonna work in here the repetition as we're supposed to do. So now we have to do row 3, that is a net stitch, all of them. So we're going to continue with the design of the stitch, but the only thing that we don't have to do any more increases. Okay, here I have this needle ready. It's a plastic needle, nice and long, easy to grab these stitches here, and this is still attached to my ball of yarn of the cotton. So it's just a little bit leftover yarn that I have in here, and it's ready for putting on here the sleeve. So now you're going to work the stitch as you're supposed to. You're going to knit the stitches, but remember we have to do the buttonhole, and then I will meet you here. I will show you how to do again the buttonhole. So you're going to knit 2, yarn to the front for a yarn over, and knit 2 together and create the yarn over on top of your needle, and knit the next stitch, pass your marker and knit this row until you get to the next marker. So I'm here at the marker. I'm going to remove that marker. I'm going to knit that stitch in here, remove this marker, and now we're going to pass all the stitches until the marker and the strand of yarn. We separated our first sleeve. Now in here, under the arm, some people increase if they need the bottom to be bigger, but I don't gonna increase. I'm gonna do 2 together. And to do that, I'm gonna frog this last stitch that I did. Move it to the needle, you see, and one behind. And these ones are loose because are pulling from this one that are in the strand of yarn. So you're gonna do these 2 together. And then later when you work in this one, those 2 loose stitches, they will get to their size again. And you're going to continue netting here until you get to the next marker, and I will measure here to separate the next sleeve. And don't forget to write down on a piece of paper that you have to start the sleeve and the repetition of row 3. So you have to keep a note of that just in case you forget that we are working in row 3 repetition. So remember to keep notes of everything that you're doing. So like I mentioned before, the sleeve had to start with repetition of row 3. So you're going to remove this marker. Now in here, you're going to net this one if you want, or you're going to leave it without netting, just pass it over, because remember that is the one that we're going to do together with the other one and the other side. So what you're going to do now, remove your markers, you don't going to need those anymore, and you're going to pass all these stitches until the marker into the strand of yarn and tie them together, and then we're going to work the 2 together and then work the rest of the stitches until the end. So this is what we've done so far, and so far so good. Remember, these had to be a little bit bigger than the kits that you're doing this for, because they were closed underneath and they move around, and you want these to last a while, not to put around for a month or so. It's not good because it's too small. It's better a little bit big than too small. So this will be perfect for William. It will be in the bigger size. So now what we're gonna do is work the repetition of the body back and forth with those 4 repetitions. So now we have to do in the body the repetition of row 4. That is the 5 net stitch, and then you start with 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, and then finish with the 5 net. And I don't think I'm gonna have enough of this one for the body and the sleeve before the borders, and I'm glad I have some more. They have them at Walmart. Is where I buy this yarn. So that's what I'm gonna do, work in here, and remember you have to still do a border in the bottom of the accent color. We are here under the arm, and I already have recorded this, and I had a little piece done, and I realized that extra stitch in the back is throwing one of the side front out of whack. The stitch don't match because we had an extra stitch. We may start moving everything to the side just because of the extra stitch. So I remove all those rows, and here before I work under the arm that decrease, I'm gonna pass that stitch that I left without working, that is nice and big because it's pulling from this here, but that will take its own shape once we start working. So you're gonna undo 2 stitches here, 1 and 2, and you're gonna do those 2 together in a net stitch, and then I'm gonna do these 2 together under the arm. So just by doing that, that don't change anything. It's just that you are 1 stitch short. That if I knew that, because I don't realize that it will throw me later, I will have removed it here on the top, and instead I have that was 21 stitches in the back. I'll have decreased 1 and work with 20. So if you're watching the video before you work, remove that extra stitch here and will be no problem. Okay, so now I'm gonna continue working with my work here, netting until I get to the other side, and then return with the repetition of row 1. A helicopter. So you're gonna continue like that till the end, and then you go back and forth. Now everything will be even because I had to undo a piece, like 3 rows, because I realized that I had that problem. Okay, but now everything will be fine, and later when we're gonna work in the border, we will increase that stitch again in the back. Okay, so here I wrote down in Spanish everything that I have to do for the sleeve. I have to start in row 3, and the decrease that I did under the arm, and the extra decrease that I did for the back, that one I had to put back later for the border. So we start with 7 stitches for rows 1, and they are in the inside of the circle. Now in the outside of the circle is the stitches that we have now. So we had 24 and 24 for each of the front, 36 and 36 for each of the sleeve, and 48 for the back. I have 49, but since I removed the extra stitch, now I have 48, and here I have wrote down the 183, but now I have 182 stitches. So that's 24 and 24, 36 and 36, 48 plus 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the 10 for the overlap at the front. So now I'm gonna work in Williams, repeating those 4 doing those 4 repetitions, and almost finished repetition 1, and then I will continue, and by doing this I'll figure out when my next buttonhole will be. So I have to do 1, 2, 3 completely this repetition, and when I start number 4 I will do the buttonhole of the next one. So I will measure William that he just woke up, and I will let you know the measurement for him from under the arm to the length that I want. But remember, we have to do less because we want to do a border with this yarn. So I will measure William and I'll let you know. Well, I had to run after William because he just runs so fast. And I measured the best as I could, and it's 20 centimeters. So I have to work around 16 centimeters of the stitch, so that will be 6.5 inches, and the other 4 centimeters, that's an inch and a half, it will be of the border. So I will continue working with that design until 16 centimeters long. Can be less, can be more, depend the length you want to give to your little one's sweater. And if you don't have the little one and you have a sweater from them, you can take the measurement from that one. Okay, so I'm gonna work for 16 centimeters with the stitches in this color. Okay, so I will see you then. Here I have the desired length for mine, and I'm gonna change color and the repetition of row 3. So either in row 1 or 3 you change the color. It's a net row, and you have to keep track of your rows still, because you have to do one more buttonhole, and we're gonna do it in this color. So you have to have the same distance that you have between these two buttonholes. You have to have from this one to the next one. Okay, so make sure that you keep track of your rows, even if they are one net one purl that will start in next row. This one will be a net row, and around the center we'll do the increase of that stitch that we bind off, and then in the way back we start with one net one purl. start the piece, we start in the right side of the piece, and we start with 1 net, 1 purl. So we're gonna start that in the wrong side of the piece, so we have to start with 1 purl, that way in the right side is a net. Okay, so you're gonna start but if you like, you can start with a net. 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl. You can remove the markers now because it will be the same back and forth, and you're gonna work until it's time to do the buttonhole. So I will meet you here when it's time to do mine to show you how you're gonna do the buttonhole in here. Okay, so see you then, and don't forget to keep track of your rows. I'm gonna work on my last buttonhole, and I'm supposed to work my last buttonhole in the repetition of row 1, but I'm gonna do a repetition of row 3 to row before, because if I do it until I have to work the repetition of row 1, it will be very, I don't want it that much of a distance between this one and the buttonhole, because this is the last one, and this is not that wide. It'll have to work bigger in order for the buttonhole to be in the center of this border. So I'm gonna do it now, and I'm gonna net 1, purl 1, and I said repetition of row 3, yes, row 3. So I'm gonna do a yarn over, and I'm gonna do purl these two together, and then I'm gonna continue with 1 net, 1 purl, 1 net, 1 purl, and I'll continue working until I have around this size for the border, and then we'll cast off or bind off and start working on the sleeves. I'm gonna bind off my stitches in the right side of the piece, and I'm gonna work them as I see them. So I'm gonna net the first one, and then measure 4 centimeters. I'm gonna purl on the second one, and you're gonna pass the first one on top of the second one, and you cast it off. Now the next one is a net. You're gonna net this one, and you're gonna pass this one on top of that one, and you cast it off. The next one is a purl. You're gonna purl that one and cast off that one, and like that you're gonna continue until the end. Well, we finished the body of the sweater, and it looked amazing. This color combination is fantastic. The color of this stripe from Red Heart. So now I'm gonna work in one of the sleeves off camera. I'm gonna write all the instructions what we're gonna do, and then when I start working in the other sleeve, I will show you how to do it. And this part we'll have to work with the double pointed needle because the sleeves are small. Or maybe you have very small knitting needle, the same size, like a 5mm knitting needle with a 9-inch core. You can use it. These are the core for socks, nice and tiny. But for me, it had to be double pointed needles. So I'm gonna lose this tail. I already lost the tail and the top here. It's gonna look really, really nice. This is the front, and this is the back. I wanted to show you that it's incredible that when I bought these buttons, I don't even have crossed my mind to do a baby sweater like this, and neither the color. And look how perfect this match in here. And I'm glad I bought to pack 6 of these because I did 6 buttonhole. So it's perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. In part 2, I will show you how to do the sleeves and how to finish our beautiful sweater or cardigan. Well, I hope you guys like it and give it a thumbs up. And subscribe to my channel if you are not already a subscriber and you make this beautiful sweater and you want to send me some pictures, you can do it through my Facebook page, Rubine Crochet Tejido, or my Instagram, Rubine Crochet Tejido. Please share my video with friends and family. That way you help me grow here on YouTube. I wish you have a beautiful day. Bye.